Hey now, my wife and I have gotten into playing euchre lately, which is a fun game to play with each other and with our my in-laws and stuff like that. And I thought it might be a fun idea to make a euchre box that can hold our special euchre cards, and we can have pegs and kind of keep track so we know who's actually winning in a particular game. Now I've got this old piece of project board, and as you can see, it's kind of dinged up in a few spots and not necessarily super useful for much, but there is enough usable space on here that's clean and not dinged up that I should be able to use this to create a nice little euchre box. So let's give it a whirl. All right, so first off, I need to decide how wide I want this. I'm thinking of going with a border of about 3/4 inches going around, and I want this to be reasonably tight to the deck of cards. So if I go with a 5.5 inch width here, that's going to give me just about a 1/4 inch of play side to side here once this is actually installed. So I'm going to go ahead and just make some little marks here for 5.5 inches. Going to get a line drawn here, and then we're going to go ahead and run this through the table saw. So I've got my line running across here, and I've got the table saw lined up for that, so we're good to cut. So here we are. Now I just need to make my measurements here for the top and the bottom piece. So for these two cuts, all I need to do is measure out 7 inches. I need just a single line, as I'll be using the miter saw for this. So I don't need to go ahead and mark a bunch of lines or draw one all the way across. So let's go and get this cut. And I'll just make sure, yep, they are pretty perfect. So I'm going to go ahead, and there's a little bit of a rough edge here. Probably need a slightly sharper blade, but I'll go ahead and get this sanded up here. Now for the border that's going to go around and contain everything on that sort of middle layer, I've gone ahead and drawn my line here at 3/4 inch, and I'm going to rip this off. I'm actually going to need more than this. This will give me for sure my 2 long 7-inch pieces, but then I also need a couple that are that 5.5 length. So I'll have to do a couple of cuts here. So next, I just need to go ahead and measure out my 2 7-inch pieces. And these are going to be cut on a 45, just to give myself that mitered edge. So I'm measuring out to the 7, and they're going to be cut like so. And yeah, there we go. And so, whoop, like that, like that. This and like that roughly. So miter saw time. And just a bunch more. So I've got all of these pieces cut and mitered, and it fits actually quite nicely. It's just super finicky when you're trying to do it by hand here without having any of them actually fastened. And our lid fits on really nicely here, and everything matches up quite well. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just sand some of these pieces here just on the surfaces that you'll be touching, taking care not to really actually adjust any of the length. Like I'm not going to go ahead and sand too hard on there or the sides until it's all sort of put together. So just a quick sanding on these here. So after sanding this here with that 100 grit sandpaper that was on that palm sander, I just used a 180 grit sanding block there just to smooth this out quite nicely on the top and the bottom. And now I'm on to the border pieces here for that middle layer. And I'm just using, this is a 120 grit sanding block. I don't have a 100 grit here for some reason at the moment. But I'm just sanding the top, giving the bottom just a tiny little bit of a sand just so it's nice and smooth, and then the inside as well. I'm not going to do the outside until I have this actually all attached, and then I'll do the outsides together. Just try to make it as smooth as possible, nice and flush. All right, so I want to start off here with one of these longer sides, and I'm going to not only brad nail, just using 1-inch brads, but I'm going to use some wood glue here in order to attach this and just make sure it's nice and secure. So I'm just going to go ahead, draw a nice bead across there. Carefully place it. This is the most nerve-wracking part of this entire operation, I swear. Right where I want it there. Aha! And now I'm just going to line up this other piece here, make sure it's good. There. And now just repeat, coming all the way around. Just make sure that this lines up well. Sweet. And then with these other pieces here, in addition to gluing along the bottom, I'm going to glue a little bit there on the end, just so it can also glue onto that piece there. Beautiful. I'll just clean off excess glue here and give it a few more brads just to be nice and secure. There. Okay, now there's a couple of spots where it's just off, just a tiny little bit. I'm just going to use a file. In between filing and sanding, I'm just going to smooth this out so everything is really nice and flush all the way around. So now I also want to throw in another little chunk of this border material in here, just so I can kind of contain the cards a little bit. So I'm just going to measure that, and it's just a hair under 4 inches. Well, yeah, basically 4 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a strip for that. So I've got this piece cut and sanded, and it's ready to install. So again, just using my wood glue. And a couple of brads. So I'm going to put this, I'd like to give myself a little bit of room on this side, and that way I can reach in and grab the card box with my teeny tiny little fingers. So let's make sure that's even, and there we go. Done. Clean this up. So before we go any further, I'd like to go ahead now and actually fill in. There are just, the odd little crack here and there. Just using some of this natural wood filler. Stuff is a pain in the butt to work with. Although it is nice that it can be sanded. Stained, so I'm just going to fill this in. It's nice, smooth all the way across, and I'm going to do the same thing here with just the entire Euchre board. So I'm just getting ready here to actually drill out. So I'm actually just getting ready here to drill out all of the holes that I'm going to be using, and I found that it's easiest if I use an awl, and I'm just going to the little X's that I've drawn here, and I'm just sort of pre-drilling, if you will, the holes where I will be actually drilling, in order to make it so that the bit hopefully won't skip around on the wood here. There we are. Okay, and I'm going to be using an 1/8 inch drill bit, which will work really well for these pegs that I've got. Now, the nice thing about the fact that these pegs are really quite tapered is I'm not super paranoid about how far I need to drill in. I don't have to have like a very precise depth, as long as I get in to a certain point where that 1/8 inch hole is just going to catch on this peg. I'm also being careful not to just go and drill right through this into my freezer. Not that I want to go that far in anyway, but we'll get this set up here and let's drill. All right, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and sand this and probably just kind of work the drill bit in and out there a little bit just to get these holes nicely cleaned out. So now I want to be able to insert a screw that I'm going to use as my pivot so that the lid of this box can shift around. So I'm going to be using this screw right here, and you can see I went ahead and actually just snipped off, well, I used a hacksaw and got rid of the end here so that when I countersink it, it won't quite get all the way through the box. But the important part is that for the entirety of this top layer, it's going to be resting, it's going to be up against this smooth part here, so it should hopefully spin rather easily. Now, what I need to do for that is get this all nice and flush, and since this is 3/4 by 3/4 of an inch for the perimeter, I've gone 3/8 by 3/8 just to be right in the middle of that. And actually, if I've learned anything today, it's that this awl is a very good friend here, so I'm going to go ahead and just make that initial poke. And nice drilled down. That's with that 1/8 inch bit. I'm going to switch up to this one here is an 11/64 bit. I think this might be the right size. And now I just need to make sure. Okay, so that's going to be a little too far. So if I drill like this, I should get down basically as far as I want to for my screw. Just like that. Now, I also want to countersink this, so I'm just going to figure out what size of drill bit I need so that I can actually set this head down inside there. So I'm pretty sure 3/8 will do it. Now I don't want to go in too terribly far. Okay, so now that I have this all patched up as good as I possibly can, it's time to install this magnet. I'm probably just going to use the one, and I'm hoping in this corner here will be sufficient for it to kind of just prevent the box from wanting to swivel around here when I don't want it to, just to kind of lock it in place a little bit. So, to do that, I'm just going to get this spun upside down here. And then I'm also just going to go ahead and mark this out. I've got this at 3/8 and 3/8, so that should be right in the middle of the 3/4 by 3/4 hole, or border. Should be good. And now, just again using my little awl here, I'm going to start that. And I'm using a wood bit here. This particular one is 15/64, which hopefully will be the right size. All right, so now I want to take my nice little magnet here, and I need to first of all make sure that it's the right side. So this is the screw that I'm planning on using for this to attach to, and yep, there we go. So it's going to be this side up. I'm going to just use some glue here. You can use some Gorilla Clear glue. Could use many different options here. Fill that up and try to get that into the little hole there. I'm undoubtedly going to get glue all over the place here trying to do this. That's okay. Just want to sort of flatten it out a bit. Like so. Just wipe up any excess that's off there. And now before I mess around with this and try to actually get the screw in place and make sure that it's all good, I'm going to let this glue dry. Even though this is quite, intentionally this is a rather snug fit, but I will let that glue dry here before I go any further. All right, so I'm at the point here. Oh, look what I did. I decided to change it, and I actually just sanded off here where my heart and diamond were. Did it in red, obviously with a black outline. I was originally worried that red wouldn't show up nicely with the stain that I'm going to put on here, but I figured with the black outline that would look, should be able to show up and look pretty decent. So anyway, I am now ready to put this, what I'm hoping will work for the screw to go on that magnet. And I'm just going to pre-drill this here with a teeny tiny little bit. Okay, so I've changed my mind. I attempted to use a screw in here with that magnet, but I found it just wasn't quite strong enough, so I think I'm going to double magnet it. So I'll throw a magnet in here. Now with this screw hole that I had, that'll just be a nice little marker for, again, the same drill bit that I used up top. So I'm just going to drill a little bit of this out here. Welcome back to the saga of ever-changing minds. I've gone ahead and added Euchre on here. I just kind of did that in the red and black. I thought that would look nice. And consequently, we've decided to just actually varnish this as opposed to staining it, just because it'll let these colors hopefully pop a little bit better. I'm just going to be using some Varathane here. And my only concern in doing this is the fact that I've got all these holes and I don't want to get a bunch of Varathane in there. So what I'm going to try to do is just using a paper towel, just very gently brush this on. And if there is any Varathane that gets into these holes, probably just using the awl, I can kind of smooth it out and make it so that it's not going to actually dry and harden and prevent me from getting any of the getting the pegs in there. So just going to go with light little bits here of this varnish. I am finding that it's tempting to, or it's trying to actually let that red, just the red, not the black, but the red is able to bleed a little bit. So I'm trying not to brush too much over top of the red parts here, just because I don't want to smear that all over the place. So just light amounts. This also means I'm going to go through more paper towel, but that's okay. Okay, there we go. That's not too bad. So I'm just going to go around. I'm going to get everywhere else here and just varnish it all up. I wound up giving this 3 decent coats of that Varathane all the way around, the tops, the bottoms, everything. And I'm really happy with it. It's nicely protected. As you can see, it fits my cards and my pegs really quite nicely. This dual magnet system here works to hold that lid in place quite nicely. And yeah, this was an interesting journey of trial and error, making some mistakes, needing some revisions, all that kind of stuff. If I go to make a similar box in the future, perhaps as a gift, I know exactly what I need to do now, just to make that the most effective box possible. But now the only really trick is to get good at this game. So yeah, till next time, keep Route 11.